The gravel cracked beneath the tires as Sarah guided the car up the winding road that led to the old country house. Morning mist still clung to the treetops, and dew glistened on the tall grass. In the back seat, 6-year-old Mia hugged her favorite stuffed rabbit, staring out the window with tired curiosity. Lucas, sitting beside Sarah, smiled faintly as the house came into view, a large, 2-story structure with weathered wood, faded shutters, and a porch that groaned under the weight of time. "It's bigger than I remember," Sarah muttered, almost to herself. The house had belonged to her grandmother, a woman known for her silence, her strict routines, and the countless locked doors that Sarah had learned not to question as a child. Inheriting the house after her passing had felt both like a gift and a challenge. Now, with the chaos of city life behind them, the move represented a fresh start, a quieter, slower existence for their small family. As they unloaded boxes and furniture, the house greeted them with a cold stillness. Dust danced in the sunbeams that filtered through the windows. The air smelled of old wood and forgotten seasons. Lucas opened a few windows, letting in the breeze. "It just needs some love," he said optimistically. That night, as they settled into their rooms, Mia wandered into the living room, holding a drawing in her small hands. It was scribbled in crayon. A little girl with long black hair, standing alone beneath a roof. "Did you draw this, sweetie?" Sarah asked, kneeling. Mia nodded. "She lives upstairs," she whispered. "She said I shouldn't forget her." Sarah blinked. "What do you mean, honey? Who lives upstairs?" But Mia only shrugged and walked away, humming a tune that neither parent recognized. Sarah looked at the drawing again. The girl had no face. Outside, wind pressed gently against the old windows, and somewhere deep within the house, a soft creak echoed. Too distant to be footsteps, too precise to be random. The first few nights passed with the kind of quiet that only deep countryside can offer. No sirens, no car horns, just the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of an owl. But Sarah noticed it immediately. The silence inside the house didn't feel peaceful. It felt expectant, as if the walls were holding their breath, waiting for something to begin. On the third night, Sarah was stirred from sleep by a soft voice. At first, she thought it was the wind again, brushing against the old windows. But then she heard it clearly whimpering. "Mia." She rushed down the hall and found her daughter sitting upright in bed, eyes wide and glassy. "She was here," Mia whispered. She was standing by the door. Sarah sat beside her, heart thudding. "Who, baby?" "The girl, the one from the attic. She said this isn't our house. She said it's still hers." Lucas, now awake, brushed it off as a bad dream. New place, unfamiliar sounds. "Kids have wild imaginations," he said, trying to be reassuring. But Sarah wasn't convinced. She had grown up visiting this house during summers, and though many memories had faded, she didn't remember ever feeling watched. The next morning, Sarah noticed something strange. A small handprint, smudged in dust, on the inside of the attic door. Too small to be Mia's. And they hadn't even opened the attic yet. Lucas laughed it off, say it was probably old, but Sarah couldn't stop staring at it. The edges were sharp, recent. That afternoon, Mia drew again. Another girl. This time, the girl stood at the top of a staircase, her arms outstretched, her mouth open in a scream. The details were chilling. Tiny flames colored orange and red licked at her feet. "Mia, what's this?" She said this is how she went away. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She walked the hallway, checked the locks, listened for the hum of the refrigerator, just to remind herself that something in this house still belonged to the present. But every time she passed the attic door, she felt it. Pressure, like something on the other side was listening too. At 3:17 a.m., the floor above creaked again. But this time, it was followed by footsteps. The attic door hadn't been opened in decades. Lucas had tried the handle once out of curiosity, only to find it stuck tight, the frame warped and swollen with age. But after Mia's third sleepless night and another drawing, this time of a trapdoor under the ceiling, Sarah insisted they check. "If it helps her sleep," she said, trying to mask the unease in her voice, "it's worth it." With a crowbar and flashlight in hand, Lucas forced the door open. A plume of dust fell like ash as the old hinges groaned, the air behind them dense and dry. The attic was a time capsule. Cobweb beams, broken chairs, boxes sealed with yellowing tape. But it wasn't until Lucas stepped deeper and that his foot struck something solid beneath a rolled-up rug. A hidden hatch. Square, metal-rimmed, locked with rusted latch. Lucas hesitated. "I don't remember this," Sarah said, her voice hushed. It took both of them to wrench it open. What they found below was a narrow staircase, steep and silent, leading to a small space tucked between the attic floorboards and the roof's incline. As Sarah shined her flashlight into the darkness, her breath caught. A child's room, tiny and claustrophobic. A small iron bed with a rotting mattress. Toys from another era, wooden blocks, a porcelain doll with one missing eye, a jack-in-the-box sitting open. The wallpaper, once pink, had faded and peeled, but childlike scribbles were still visible. On one wall, in a trembling hand, someone had written a single name repeatedly, but the ink had run with water stains, the letters nearly erased by time. Sarah stepped inside and noticed a stack of crayon drawings in the corner. Drawings of fire, of closed doors, of a crying girl reaching through slats of wood. One page of the words, "I'm still here," scratched so hard into the paper it had torn through. Mia, standing behind her parents, looked around with unsettling calm. "I told you she lived here," she said. "She said this was her room. She's happy we found it." Sarah turned to her daughter. "How do you know that?" Mia smiled softly. "Because she said she doesn't have to be forgotten anymore." That night, Sarah lay awake replaying it all. How could Mia have known about the room? About the hatch? About the name, faintly visible even now on the wall, just beneath the scribbles? Clara. It was a name Sarah didn't recognize, but her blood turned cold when Mia whispered it in her sleep. The next morning, Sarah searched through the dusty boxes scattered in the attic. She found an old leather-bound photo album beneath a stack of yellowed letters. Fingers trembling, she flipped through the fragile pages. There, in black and white photographs, were images of her grandmother, smiling, stern, and always composed, surrounded by two little girls. One child was her mother, unmistakably. The other was different, a shadowy figure standing beside them, a girl with dark eyes staring directly at the camera, face expressionless. What unsettled Sarah most was that the second girl's image appeared in every photo until abruptly disappearing halfway through the album. It was as if she had been erased. Sarah's heart pounded as she recalled the name Mia had whispered. Clara, curious and disturbed, Sarah took the album to the local historical society the next day. She combed through archives, old newspapers, and town records. Her search led her to a tragic story, a fire that had ravaged a house decades ago. The fire had started in the attic, but only the adults and one child escaped. The second daughter, Clara, was trapped inside. The records were sparse and painful. Official documents barely acknowledged her existence, as if the family had tried to erase the memory. Rumors whisper of shame and secrecy, a sorrow too heavy to bear aloud. The house had been sealed off for years, and the attic door locked tight to hide the past. Sarah sat back in disbelief. The forgotten child was real, and her spirit was bound to the room hidden in the attic. When she returned home, she found Mia sitting quietly by the fireplace, clutching one of the old drawings. The child's eyes were distant, as if she were listening to something only she could hear. "She said she's lonely," Mia murmured. "She's been waiting for someone to remember her." Lucas tried to comfort Sarah, insisting they were letting grief and imagination run wild. But Sarah could no longer dismiss the chill in her bones or the growing sense that Clara was reaching out, through their daughter, through the house itself. That night, the house seemed to sigh with 1,000 unspoken words. The forgotten bloodline, erased by tragedy, was clawing its way back into the light. And Mia, unknowingly, was its bridge. Days passed, and Mia's behavior changed in ways Sarah couldn't ignore. It started with small things. Mia talking to herself in the corner of the room, whispering words that made no sense. Then came the sudden fits of laughter, eerie and hollow, echoing through the empty hallways late at night. Toys moved inexplicably. Blocks toppled as if pushed by invisible hands. One afternoon, Mia sat at the kitchen table, eyes glazed as she traced the shape of the hidden room with her finger in the condensation on the glass. "She's coming back," Mia said softly. "She says she wants to play forever." Sarah's heart twisted in fear. She caught Mia drawing again, a chilling image of the attic room. Every detail precise, down to the cracked doll's eye and the worn mattress. Below the drawing, words were scribbled in a shaky hand. "Don't forget me." Lucas, once skeptical, began to grow uneasy. He heard footsteps pacing above when no one was there, doors creaking open by themselves, cold spots that lingered in the hall. Yet Mia seemed both victim and vessel, a small girl caught between worlds, her bright spirit fading as something darker seeped in. One night, Sarah woke to find Mia standing at the foot of her bed, eyes black and empty. The little girl whispered in a voice not her own, "I'm tired of waiting." Panic surged through Sarah as she reached for her daughter, but Mia pulled away, smiling with a sadness that broke her mother's heart. The presence in the house wasn't just haunting anymore. It was growing stronger, feeding on forgotten pain, on the silence that had swallowed Clara's name for decades. And now it was claiming Mia's innocence, inch by inch. Sarah and Lucas knew they couldn't wait any longer. They had to confront whatever was trapped in the attic, or risk losing Mia forever. The storm had rolled in without warning. Thunder rumbled like distant warnings as rain hammered the windows, turning the house into a fortress surrounded by darkness. Inside, tension had thickened to an unbearable weight. Mia had been restless all evening, whispering to shadows no one else could see. Suddenly, she was gone. Sarah's scream shattered the night. Lucas grabbed a flashlight, and together they tore through the house, calling her name until their voices cracked. Footsteps echoed from above, light, quick, almost playful. The attic door, once securely locked, now stood ajar, as if inviting them in. With hearts pounding, they climbed the narrow stairs. The forgotten room lay before them, dimly lit by a single flickering candle, its flames struggling against the draft. Mia sat cross-legged on the floor, her head tilted unnaturally to one side, eyes glazed and unseeing. "She said I can stay here forever," Mia repeated, her voice hollow. Shadows twisted along the peeling wallpaper, and the old toys seemed to twitch, as if alive. Then, in the corner, a small figure materialized, a girl no older than Mia, her skin mottled with burns, eyes empty voids. Her mouth moved in a whisper only Sarah could hear. "You left me." Tears blurred Sarah's vision as she dropped to her knees. "Clara," she whispered, "we didn't forget because we wanted to. We were scared. Please forgive us." The ghost's expression flickered, rage and sorrow battling within her hollow gaze. The temperature dropped sharply, breath visible in the icy air. The toys rattled violently, and the candle sputtered. Lucas shouted Mia's name, reaching out. Suddenly, the apparition lunged forward, its form dissolving into a wave of cold that swept through the room. Mia collapsed into Sarah's arms, breathing shallow but alive. For a moment, silence reigned. Then the ghost's voice, soft and mournful, echoed one last time. "Now I leave you." The attic door slammed shut, and the storm outside began to ease. Morning light crept cautiously through curtains, casting pale shadows across the quiet house. The storm had passed, but its aftermath lingered in the heavy air. Sarah sat beside Mia's bed, watching her daughter sleep, a fragile stillness settling over her features that hadn't been there before. Outside, the police had come and gone, leaving behind questions they couldn't answer and a house that seemed to hold its breath. When Sarah had shown them the attic, the hidden room was gone. The hatch had vanished as if it had never existed. No trace of the burned walls, no toys, no scribbles on a faded wallpaper. Only the old dust and silence remained. Mia didn't speak about the ghost anymore. She clutched her rabbit tightly and watched the shadows with cautious eyes. Sometimes, late at night, Sarah thought she heard a faint lullaby drifting down from the attic, a soft, sorrowful melody sung by a voice that had finally found peace. One evening, Sarah climbed the stairs to the attic alone. The door was closed, unyielding. When she pressed her hand against the cold wood, she felt a whisper of warmth like a breath or a sigh. On the floor, where the hatch had been, she found a new drawing slipped beneath the door. 3 girls, hand in hand, smiling softly beneath the gentle light. One was Mia, one was Clara, and the third was the mother who had once forgotten. Sarah traced the lines with trembling fingers, understanding that some memories could never be erased, only forgiven and carried forward. The house was still, but now it held a new silence, one that promised healing.